Welcome to our second video in topic 2 molecular biology, and in this video we are looking at water and its role in the metabolism in living organisms. Okay, first up, let us start thinking about our molecule of water. All known life forms require water to some degree. It is the most abundant compound found in cells and organisms, about 75 to 85%. Practically all substances and chemical processes of biological significance occur in a watery medium. Nearly 72% of the Earth is actually covered in water, and it is home to a vast array of living things. Now, the structure and properties of water, so the actual molecule of water, what do we know? We know that water is a polar molecule. It has a small positive charge on the two hydrogen atoms and a small negative charge on the oxygen atom. Okay, so you can see the positive charge on the hydrogens, negative charge there on the oxygen. This gives an uneven distribution of electrical charge, creating a positive region and a negative region. Weak hydrogen bonds can form between the positive charge of one molecule and the negative region of another, and you can see that in our diagram here. So you've got that positive charge on the hydrogen and that negative charge on the oxygen. Hydrogen bonds are transitory in nature. They constantly form, break, reform. Okay, so there you can see all the hydrogen bonds around that little hierarchy structure there of our water molecules. Obviously, it's not actually that neat all the time. Nature is not always that neat. Okay, the hydrogen bond is responsible for many of the properties of water: cohesion, adhesion, thermal properties, and solvent properties. We're now going to look at each of them individually. Okay, so cohesion. Hydrogen bonds hold water molecules together. So cohesion is that holding together of the water molecules. We've got our two little water molecules there cohesively attached. So water molecules attract each other, producing cohesive forces that allows the water to be drawn up the inside of the xylem of plants in a continuous column of water from the leaves down to the roots. So basically what's happening is water evaporates from the leaves of plants, and that causes this continual column pull of water from the roots up the stalk and out the leaves. Okay, we call this process transpiration, and it's a continuous column of water. When that breaks, we end up with plants wilting. Okay, but cohesion causes that drag of water up through the plants. You can see that in that diagram there. The water's being pulled into the roots by the column of water being pulled up the stalk of the plant, and then the water evaporating out the stomata on the leaves. Cohesion is responsible as well for surface tension on water bodies, allowing small organisms to look as if they're walking on water. So here we've got our pond skipper, so we call them in England, and they actually look like they're walking on water, and the reason for that is the cohesion between the water molecules in water. Okay, adhesion. Now, hydrogen bonds can form between water and other polar molecules, causing them to stick together. Okay, so we've got our cohesion between our water molecules and our adhesions between other molecules. Okay, so adhesion could occur between the water molecule and the xylem cell wall there, whereas cohesion is between the two water molecules. So you see that the adhesion is between the molecule and the wall, the cohesion is between the molecules. Okay, so this property is useful in leaves where water adheres to the cellulose molecules in the cell wall. Adhesion can also be seen as the movement of water within the plant. Adhesion forces water to be drawn up through the xylem vessels when water is not being evaporated from the leaves. So the adhesion continues to pull the water up even if evaporation is not occurring. So in conditions where it might not be warm enough for evaporation to occur, okay, adhesion will still allow water to be pulled up through the plant so long as there's water available at the roots. Okay, so this is just a cartoon showing that difference between the cohesion, which is between the molecules, and the adhesion, which is between the molecule and the xylem wall in this case. Adhesion and cohesion occur in other circumstances, but we're just using these examples to really demonstrate to you how it's important and where, you know, an application of it. Okay, so we had cohesion, adhesion. Now our third property of water was these thermal properties. Okay, so water has several thermal properties that are really useful to living organisms. Water has what we call a high specific heat capacity, and that is that a large amount of energy is required to break the hydrogen bonds between these water molecules. So water can effectively absorb and give off much heat without its temperature changing very much. Temperature fluctuations, therefore, are minimal, and a stable temperature within a narrow range is required for chemical reactions to occur within living organisms. So that would suggest that water is the ideal environment for these reactions to occur because it keeps a very, very stable temperature range. Organisms that live in aquatic habitats face less extremes in temperature fluctuations than those in terrestrial habitats. Water bodies tend to stay at a fairly consistent temperature. Within the water body, the temperature of the water can assist then in that thermoregulation. Blood, which is mainly water, distributes heat from warmer or colder parts of the body. Okay, so if an area of the body is hot, then blood pumps around the body, in organisms with blood, pumps around the body and cools that area down. Okay, now another quality of water in terms of thermoregulation is this high latent heat of vaporization, and we've got our dog there panting. Okay, when liquid water evaporates and becomes water vapor, the hydrogen bonds must be broken, requiring a lot of energy. Now, when animals sweat, the process of evaporation carries a large amount of heat and so acts as a coolant. So animals sweat and pant to increase evaporation and cooling. It's quite fascinating, and we will look into that further in future units. This is just introducing the idea. Okay, another thing with water is it has this high boiling point. Okay, so water has a really high boiling point. Many hydrogen bonds must be broken, and therefore the input of energy is going to be pretty high. Water is mainly found as a liquid on Earth. Yes, we know it as a gas. We know it in its steam, as we call it steam. We know it in its gaseous form, but a majority of water on Earth is found in its liquid form. Okay, so it's between 0 and 100 degrees, and that's quite a range for it to be in that liquid form. All right, our fourth property that we were going to look at were these solvent properties. Water is sometimes said to be the universal solvent. When we teach solvents and solutions in year 7, this is what we teach you. Okay, so water is our universal solvent. Due to its polarity, many polar molecules will dissolve in water. Their positive ions will be attracted to the negative charge of the oxygen end of the water, whilst the negative ions will be attracted to the positive hydrogen end of the water molecule. Now, most inorganic ions, for example, your sodium, potassium chloride, dissolve because they are also polar. Polar organic molecules, including amino acids and carbohydrates, are also soluble in water. The property of solubility results in water acting as an excellent transport medium. It means it can carry these molecules around, it dissolves the molecules, and then can carry them where they're required within the body. Blood, so plasma, carries dissolved sugars, amino acids, carbon dioxide, hormones, and many other substances around the body. The xylem, that's in plants, that carries dissolved minerals from the roots up to the leaves in water. The phloem, this is the opposite to the xylem in plants. This carries dissolved sugars from the leaves to elsewhere in the plants. So remember, in photosynthesis is occurring in the leaves of plants, and the sugars formed through photosynthesis then need to be carried to the other cells within the plant that requires them for photosynthesis. So you've got the xylem carrying nutrients from the roots up to where they're required in the plant, and the phloem carrying nutrients and sugars from the leaves through the plant to where they're required, all in water. Water acts as the medium for metabolic reactions. We spoke about that in the last video. Most biochemical reactions take place in water, since almost all substances involved dissolve well in water. Okay, so this whole idea of our hydrophilic and hydrophobic we looked at in our previous topic. All substances that dissolve in water are said to be hydrophilic. The literal meaning of that term, hydrophilic, as we know, is water-loving. It is used to describe substances that are chemically attracted to water. You're not going to use the term water-loving, you will use the term hydrophilic. Hydrophilic substances include polar molecules such as glucose and particles with a charge such as sodium and chloride ions. Substances that adhere to cellulose, for example, are also hydrophilic. The term hydrophobic is used to describe molecules that are insoluble in water. Molecules are hydrophobic if they do not have a charge and are non-polar. Just a funny little cartoon there. Okay, so one of your application sections of this unit. Modes of transport of glucose, amino acids, cholesterols, fats, oxygen, and sodium chloride in blood in relation to their solubility in water. So water, these things are carried in blood due to their solubility in water. Blood plasma consists of mainly water, 95%, plus dissolved substances which it's transporting. Glucose, a polar molecule, hence it's freely soluble, is carried by blood plasma. Sodium chloride, it's an ionic compound, freely soluble in water, dissolving to form the ions of sodium, that's Na+, and chloride, Cl-, carried in blood plasma. Amino acids will be transported in the blood in an ionized state. Either the amine and or the carboxyl group may be charged. They're all carried in blood plasma. Oxygen, non-polar molecule, due to its small size of an due to the small size of the oxygen molecule, it is soluble in water, but only just. Hemoglobin in red blood cells carry a majority of the oxygen. Hemoglobin has 4 binding sites for oxygen. Fats, large non-polar molecules, insoluble in water, that carried in the blood inside lipoprotein complexes in the plasma. Cholesterol molecules are hydrophobic, apart from a small hydrophilic region at one end. This is not enough to make cholesterol dissolve in water. So therefore, they're carried in the blood in a lipoprotein complex in the blood plasma. Okay, so we saw there all these different molecules and substances, some being dissolved in the blood plasma, some being carried around in our lipoproteins, and our oxygen there being carried by the hemoglobin. Okay, application. Use of water as a coolant in sweat. High temperature damages tissues and denatures proteins, causing enzymes to cease working. Okay, so if we've got enzymes, one of the things that will denature their structure is high temperature. It takes a lot of energy for water to change temperature. This means that it will heat and cool more slowly than air or land. This is really, really useful to animals in hot climate who can use water or mud, of course, to cool down in a hot day. When the water evaporates, it removes a lot of energy from the system. This is felt as a cooling sensation. Excess heat energy is removed from the body, and we call this the latent heat of evaporation. The skin and their blood vessels are then cooled. This also helps in aquatic habitats to remain fairly constant in temperatures, especially during hot summers. Okay, another application, the comparison of the thermal properties of water with those of methane. So here we have a water molecule and our methane molecule, and we've got some comparisons there. So we've got the formula, molecular mass, how the bonding in the molecule, whether they're polar, non-polar, and some other information there in comparison of the two molecules. So methane is a waste product of anaerobic respiration in certain types of prokaryotic living in anaerobic conditions. Methane can be used as a fuel. If present in the atmosphere, it does contribute to the greenhouse effect. Thank you for watching video 2.2. I look forward to seeing you in video 2.3.